Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Eric Lucasian with TRACKILICIOUS. I'm really the guest on the Ed Kerstetter show here, and joined with Danny Baisden. Hello, guys. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Well, thank you. Just coming off of the 949 TRACKILICIOUS iRacing MX5 League. How was that for you guys tonight?
Danny, you can start.
First race was great. I surprised myself with the first race. The second race, I also surprised myself for other different reasons.
Different way.
Yeah.
Danny Baisden, murder capital of the iRacing world.
You know, ACC and iRacing are two completely different things.
Yeah, it's interesting that you should say that, because I know there have been a bunch of people that were practicing and really preparing for the Daytona 24 that found themselves a little bit lower in the standings in our league race on Sunday. It's been difficult for most to transition back and forth between the two sims, but there's always that one guy, that Manir fella, that's figured it out. He seems to be able to go back and forth relatively seamlessly, so he's got some magic sauce there. But on to our main event tonight, back on for our third installment of Education with Kerstetter, featuring the one and only Carbon himself as well. So thank you guys for coming back tonight, and really excited to hear what you guys have to say, and I am going to hand it off to you.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, guys, for joining. We are at Spa, and I'll preface this before I start any breaking points or anything. This is highly dependent on setup here, because you can run sort of a low downforce, medium downforce setup, probably not a high downforce, and it'll kind of greatly change. In some corners, you may not have to lift, or lift very slightly with some setups, and other setups you may have to lift more or completely get off the throttle for a little bit. Well, here we'll speak somewhat in generalities and probably a little bit on the conservative side. Your mileage may vary based upon the type of setup you have and the car you're running, obviously. So I'll get right to it. We'll try to actually complete this within the hour this time. And what I'll do from a change from last time is actually start to combine some corners. And maybe that'll help hasten or kind of pull things together, and also make it go just a little bit quicker as well. So without further ado, I'll get started, unless Danny or Eric, you have anything to say before we get going.
No, this is going to be an exciting one. Spa is something that I think I find relatively challenging, so certain special corners as well. So very much so looking forward to the information you have available for us, and I'm sure others do as well. It's a very technical track. It's got a lot of variety in corners, so a lot to learn.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so getting started here, coming down into turn one after the start-finish line. Really, I'll keep the chase cam, and then I'll dive into first person going through it. So braking points at this spot is sort of after where this wall starts curving or starts straightening back out on the left hand side, all the way up to about the 100 sign. It's probably the if you're looking out of car, where you'd start wanting to trying to pick up your braking zone. And this is a pretty hard braking zone for the length of the straightaway that it is, and it's very important because you set yourself up for basically one of the longest straightaways, sans maybe Paul Ricard, I think, on any of the tracks. And so it is very important to get out of turn one without having to lift or correct oversteer or anything like that to try to maximize your speed, because it's always better to maybe give up a tenth just to make sure you don't overdrive the exit of turn one, or overdrive the entry and mess up your exit. and then gain some of that back down the straight than it is to I guess it's much safer to give up a little bit on entry and then gain that on exit, as opposed to just driving in too deep and messing up the exit, because then you're going to be kicking yourself for the next 30 seconds as you're thinking about what you did and how to correct it next time. So, but yeah, braking zone between the when the wall starts to straighten up, and I guess you can maybe use this sign here as well if it's there. And again, to about what looks in the car, at least to the 100 zone, but that's probably a little bit too deep in most cases in a GT4s. So the goal here is to keep it on the outside as long as possible, to set up a very ideally straight exit where you're getting back on the throttle early and carrying a ton of speed through the corner. So what I'll do is stop, play it through. So you see hugging that white line, turning in a little bit later, and different people go through this different ways. You can cut it all the way to the wall if you want. There's no track cut on the inside, or you can sort of run it where your right side tires just hit the curb. For me, it just depends on how well I get into the corner. I'll make changes. The curb doesn't impact the GT4s like it does the GT3s, it seems like, so you can really get aggressive. So coming here, you can see I get really close. Oh, actually, the mirror hit, but I don't think they model the mirror physics. So I'm hugging that inside wall pretty good, using all that curb. And this is not a track cut here. This is usually a bit too aggressive from what I normally run, because it does make your exit a little bit tighter and can impact your drive off. So usually what I'd aim for is maybe running over the middle of this black and yellow curb with the middle of your car is probably a safe bet there. And then the goal here is to come off and be on the throttle as soon as you can, and not have any sort of, especially oversteer. The car tends to get a little bit oversteery here, because you'll just scrub off speed. And so, ideally, I'd probably be on the throttle a little bit sooner if I hadn't cut the corner as much as I did. But it's a little bit of a trial and error as well. Sometimes you can cut the corner and get off real well and carry a ton of speed down. But safest bet's running that middle of the curb, middle of the car. And then you can let the car run all the way out. Try not to get on the yellow curb. If you go over it, it's a track cut. But even if your left side tires hit it, it seems to slow down the car. So this is about as far left as you really want to be. So I'll run this through full speed, and then I'll run it through in cockpit.
I think you use that inside curb to rotate the car, not just brush up against it.
Right.
That was close. Nice.
Get the rear
Nice.
end,
Well,
kick it out a little bit. And
yeah, well done.
So here we'll run it in car. Back it up.
I think the technical term, since we're a late night education show, is he made that inside corner his bitch. That he really went over that.
I thought I was close. I didn't think I was that close when I did it in the game. So don't go any closer than that, because you'll have a contact for sure.
That is full commitment.
Okay, now I gotta look. Now I gotta see this real quick. Hold on, let's do this.
It looked like it actually kicked the back end out just a smidge. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I
touched it.
brushed it. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't even model that wall fully. So.
Well, there you go, everybody. How to gain two tenths in the first turn.
Maybe
Brush the
2
wall.
100s. Let's see.
Yeah.
While I'm checking this out, anything from you, Danny, on T1 here?
T1's it's a tricky one, but it's only tricky when you don't have your breaking points. So find your breaking point and stick to it. Memorize it, because it's so easy to run wide, and it's really easy to come up short. And it's going to punish you down the next straight. So really keep this one in the back of your head as far as where you're going to brake, and just maximize the exit as much as possible. So even if that means braking a little deeper and taking a later apex, you want to gain as much speed as you can.
Right. And yeah, in the car too, Like I'm usually looking at this 100 sign to see when it passes by the A pillar, and I kind of use that as my in-car braking point. It's not exact, so you can see as soon as it disappears behind the A pillar, I'm on the brakes. It looks like I'm at the 100, but in the car, but in reality, I'm quite far away, right? I'm actually again right where this wall sort of straightens out, but in car it looks like I'm around at the 100. So again, braking zone, wall straight all the way to a little bit before the 100 is probably a good
Can
zone to target.
So Ed, can you go in car just to show where the turning point is relative to
Oh,
your
sure.
in car view? Because I think, so like pretty far. So a lot
And
of
actually,
straight line braking and then trailing into the corner.
yeah, and ideally, because I got so close, you actually want to go just a little bit deeper. I had a little bit of maintenance throttle here because I think I overslowed, and so you see me get back on the throttle just a little bit because I didn't want to hit the wall. And so ideally, you're even driving it in a little bit deeper before you turn than I did here. Gives you a little straighter shot off. Cool. So coming up to the next corners, 2, 3, and 4. I'm just going to say corner numbers. This is not as bad as it is in the GT3s because you're not going flat out, right? There's a definite lift here. In the GT3s, depending on the car and how you hit it, you can be flat out. In the 4s, it's really, I don't think any car can really take it flat. So I think it doesn't make the corner as treacherous. And the curbing doesn't affect the car as much. I know at least in the Porsche and in the Lambo, if you get that inside curb coming up the hill on corner 3, it tends to want to spin the car. In the GT4s, it's not so much. You actually use that inside curbing. So coming across, what you want to do, again, I'll switch to external camera here, is run over, use this gray curbing on the first curb on the left-hand side to give you a straighter entry into the second part of the corner. And so I really try to run over that. Don't get on the grass, but use that as much as you can to set yourself up. For at least in this car, I had to do a little bit of braking just to slow the car down, and then work it to get back to the inside. You can hit the curb a little bit, and then let the car feed out. And this is about as far as you can go. I did not get a track cut here, but middle of the car to where that gray thick line is that borders the outside red and white curb. Is where you want to about as far left as you want to run without getting a track cut, and then you can let the car feed out naturally to the right hand side to set yourself up for the little kink here. I'll run through that full speed. So as you're going over that first curb is when you want to lift or get on the brake slightly a little bit, just to bleed up enough speed to where you can complete the rest of the corner without having to lift. So on the brakes here, and then a little bit maintenance throttle, and then back on, and ideally you're not lifting again. And I'll go back, do it in car. And then that'll set you up nice for the long straightaway. Danny, feel free to jump in if you have anything. If not, I'll move to 5, 6, 7.
No, you covered that section quite well. It's a tricky one, and you just have to fill out your car. These things don't have the aero that the GT3s have. So, but yeah, you covered that perfectly.
I will add that for those newer drivers in ACC, Ed makes that look really easy, but it's quite a challenging corner. So don't feel defeated if it takes you a long time and many laps to figure out how he just did that. Because I have been driving ACC for 6-8 months now, and I still don't know how to take that those sets of corners well. So don't feel defeated. It's very tough, and Ed's quite good at it. And it'll take you some time to get it right. And lots of crashes.
And it's totally a confidence corner too. So, get comfortable. You want to be comfortable going up that corner, right? You don't want to be fighting it spinning out every time, because if you're in the race and you're going to lose more time trying to not spin and not wreck up the hill than you will if you just maybe make the car a little bit easier to drive up there, either maybe a little more wing or a little less rake, to make sure you have confidence, because that confidence is going to do much more than any little changes in rake or wing that you can do for the rest of the rest of the corners. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to attack that section is just to take it slow, get through it safely, and then start increasing your speed after that.
Yep.
And then in race format, just always know that it's better to get a warning than it is to wreck your car. So
you got 3 of them. Use them.
Yeah, take it wide if you need to, and just play it safe.
Yep. Great. So now you can kind of sip your coffee, get a drink as you're coming down this straightaway. And the next set of corners is 5, 6, 7. So we'll take these as in one section because they certainly play off each other. And so we'll cover them together because of that. Coming into here, in car, I'll use the beginning of the curbing, brake a little bit before I see that curbing come up to the dash. So you want to use that as your reference and then adjust, obviously, based on your car and seating position. While it looks like, if you look at in-car, this is when I got on the brakes externally, it looks like I'm fairly close to that curb outside the car, right? A little bit different story. I'm pretty far back. But there's not really a good braking marker that I could see on, and so usually that curb or that sign is, both are, you're just judging your distance to that and then braking accordingly. And the goal here is to stay left. It's a right, left, right, right? So my goal here is to get through the middle section as cleanly as possible, because if I do that, I know that I hit, the right-hander correctly, and I went through that, maybe a little conservative, but I can go through 2 quickly, and that second left-hander, and then I could also, which sets me up for the right-hander. So I try to make sure that when I'm conservative here, because that has a good chance of setting you up correctly for the next 2. So coming in, keep it on the left-hand curb here. And then what you want to do, I use all the curb and then some, so I actually try to get up on the green, which then enables me to come off this corner a little bit straighter and hit this apex sort of without having to arc right and back left. So I get up on this green curb, try to straighten the car out. And this left-hander is a little bit tricky. In pre-1.8, you can actually really use a lot of this curbing. I think based on the tire dynamic changes and things that is not, I can't do that anymore, let's say. The car wants to step out on me, and then I slide. And so I can't use I used to be able to use the green. I can't do that anymore in either GT3 or GT4. So you can get over the curb a little bit. You can see my car kind of steps out just a little bit because of that. But I can't go over that like I used to. And then the goal, see, it only took me that long to click somewhere else. The goal is to get yourself set up for the right-hander. And so you want to kind of keep it somewhat tight. You don't want to bring it all the way out to the outside curb because you're really never going to get back in time. Swing it out to the left and then try to set yourself up for this corner, which this one is like a big confidence corner for me because you can actually drive it in a little bit more than you think you can and the car will stick. I don't know if it's because of the camber or what, but it definitely you definitely take this faster than you think you can, and you just have to be careful on exit because that is about as far as you can go before you get a track cut, I believe. You might be able to go maybe a foot left, but usually I try to avoid the center of the car going over the separator between the red and white curb and the green, the bright green AstroTurf or whatever that is.
Do you short shift into this last section?
I think I stay in third here. Yeah. I keep it down into third. So and again, the gearing is going to be completely different depending on, which car. but this is the 570S, so I go down to third, and I believe I just stay in third. I try to keep it simple here, so I'm not having to think about shifting and whatnot.
I think one of the strategies I was told by other people is to, in order to, specifically maybe for GT3s, is in order to stop the back end from kicking out when you want to really get on the power early, because this is a bit of a straight, you short shift into it to try and clean it up a little bit and still be able to maintain the on power.
So you mean upshifting early?
Yeah.
Yeah, to stop the rear from kicking out. Again, definitely gear ratio car specific. That is a valid strategy by, the one that really jumps out at me is the last corner at Silverstone, where in the GT3s you can short shift and it helps the rear from stepping out. I think of the GT3s, but I think a lot of the GT4s, it's really not necessary.
Okay.
Because it's just you're going to be. It doesn't slide as much, right? And the gearing is a little bit different. So, if we look at car, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, in the GT3s you can certainly do that. In fact, a lot of the cars, as you're going into that corner, you'll be lifting off, but while you're lifting off, you can upshift to the next gear, whether it be third or fourth, depending on the car. And you sort of have to, because a lot of the cars are at the top of the rev range. I think you might be able to get away with it in the McLaren, but you're not really going to be gaining much. Just to kind of, I certainly have done it in the Aston Martin, the McLaren 720, and a few other cars. So I think it's more GT3 centric.
Okay.
Gotcha. So we'll run through this in cockpit. And that green curbing on the left, on this one here, that's optional. I've seen some people kill it, like even more than I did here, and other people try to avoid it. I think in the GT4s it doesn't matter as much, because it doesn't upset the car. That's kind of a common theme on most curbs throughout the game between GT3s and GT4s. So I tend to use it, but I think it's just as fast by not using it. All right, coming down to the next section, which is 8 and 9, and we'll count 10 in it as well. So this one, again, I'm using the curbing and judging my distance off that for when I start braking. So it looks like in car that I am braking right when the curbing starts and hits the dash. In reality, it's slightly. Let's see. I guess I start right here, and so it's not, But again, with how fast the cars are going and how it looks like I'm on top of that curb when I start braking. Again, not a very good reference point, except for the 100, right? There's nothing else on track, so I always use the curb, but now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I could use the 100 sign, but it's kind of out of your peripheral vision, right? Like in car, sort of. It looks like you're well past it before you start, so it's hard to use that as a reference like while in the car. And the goal here is to not slow down too quick, because it's very easy to get on the brakes and really slow down, and then you're waiting and waiting and waiting to get back on the throttle, instead of carrying a little bit more speed in and sort of expanding the middle of the corner a little bit, and that'll get which then enables you to kind of clip the inside curb again on exit and get some good momentum off the corner. So if we look externally, I'll play it back. It's get on the brakes hard initially, and then I like to roll the center as much as I can. So you see, modulate the brake a little bit, and then wait a little, and then get back on. But you don't really want to hug the curb the entire way around. See how I let the car kind of slide out? I downshift in the second again in the McLaren, but cars may vary. And then that enables me, when I come off the corner, to apex again and hit the curb again, and come off this corner not too wide, which then sets up corner 9, which is very. I think this is a super tricky corner. In the GT4s, you can use the curbing to enter, and you're in another situation where you can kill the curb or not. Again, as you tend to see, I tend to like to kill the curbs, which sets you up for this quick little straightaway. And again, this is kind of as far as you want to go, center of the car. I think they actually expanded this in 1.8 a little bit. You could probably go a little bit further now. I want to say, like, if your left side tires hit the green, it's probably a track cut. But I think they expanded that a little bit in the recent patch, which then sets you up for the next set of corners, which is 10 and 11. So I'll play this back at full speed. Oh, let me back up one more. Hey, what's up, Well? So roll the center a little bit, and then try to straighten the exit. Come out to the center of the track, fight back to the right-hand side to set yourself up for 9, and then just be careful not to get a track cut. And the braking point in the middle there, if we're looking at between 9 and 9 and 10. I actually don't look at anywhere in particular. I don't think this is a feel one for me, because again, like, there's nothing in car that I can see that gives me a reliable braking area. Like, it's where the gap in the fence is, but you really can't see that when you're in the car. So this is a feel one. I kind of look at the distance to apex and brake sort of accordingly and try to keep it consistent. But all right, I'll go back and play it all the way through. There we go. Sets us up for 10 and 11. Cool. So heading into 10 and 11, if I had a single word, it would be patience here again. My goal is to get the car woed down as early as possible, within reason, and then try to stay on the throttle with a slight lift in 11. So because after 11 is another somewhat longer, medium-long straightaway, and it's very easy to sort of not be patient and push it, and then you have to lift, and then you lose a ton of time. Or if you swing wide, you're going to lose a whole ton of time. So my goal here is to get up on the curb. In the GT4s, you can use it. It helps the car rotate a little bit. And then, again, this is another feel one. I don't have much in car that I look at when I start hitting the brakes. But it's fairly heavy on the initial braking. And then once you feel like you've woed down enough, you kind of toss it to the inside. You can hit the curb a little bit. I missed it on this particular lap, but it doesn't hurt the car if you just hit it a little. Don't go over it, though. And then the goal here is my goal is to get back on the throttle as soon as I can. Let it swing wide. You can use a little bit more of this curb. I try not to, though, because that means I really pushed it a little too far, so I use that as a buffer. And then try to set up this turn 11 with a very little lift in the GT4s. In the 3s, it's flat. In the 4s, at least in the McLaren with this setup, I have to just breathe the throttle a little bit, so it doesn't swing out too wide. And then you can use a little bit more of this curb on exit. I try not to. I just try to use the red and white, which then gives you, a little bit of, you got a little straightaway here, but before the next complex of 12, 13, 14, and 15. So I'll play this through full. Danny, feel free to chime in if you have any tips or breaking points here. What's up, Cardo?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. This one's tough. You have to go as deep as you possibly can into this section of corners without washing out. I've done that multiple times, and like you said, it's important to stay patient. Wait for the car to grip up, and once you feel that the car is ready, then start accelerating. And if you accelerate too soon, you're going to wash out wide, get a track warning, or spin out. Or if you're too late, you're going to clip the inside curb and possibly upset the car and spin too. So patience is definitely your friend here.
So
Yeah.
So I have a question. This is the toughest corner for me of all of ACC, maybe. Okay. and it's kind of like a fear-based corner because I hopped into an enduro not being prepared, told the guys I wasn't prepared, and spun it and crashed in this corner and ruined the pretty good position for them. But also, I find that I lose the rear end going into the corner more often than I would like. Is that breaking into it too late, or I don't know?
I feel like if you try to carry too much speed on initial entry, the car is going to oversteer rather than understeer. Once you get to midpoint, it seems like the car wants to push if you're carrying too much speed. But on entry, depending on how you're using the curb, it could. I've seen it where, like especially in the Porsche, is one of those where it wants to loop. And the GT4s is not as much, right? Obviously, they're much more stable, for better or worse. But yeah, I think like if you're going in and spinning, you're probably getting on the brakes and or not necessarily too hard, but when you're releasing them, you're probably releasing it not in a controlled manner, and then that's just upsetting the balance of the car, and you're getting oversteer. Would be my guess.
Yeah, there could be a number of different reasons causing it. I would start looking at your inputs as to when you are spinning. It's very likely that maybe you're turning in too hard or too aggressively into the corner, and it's rotating the car too much. Because it is, I can't remember. Is this one off camber a little bit too? If not, there's not much camber into the corner, so you don't have that kind of helping you. The other aspect is setup. A lot of people will run a setup that is a little bit more oversteery, a little bit more aggressive, just to get the car to rotate through this corner and carry as much speed as you can. You have a lot less downforce on the car as well for the straights, so there could be a number of different reasons. But I would start with your inputs, just like Ed said.
So a bit more gradual in the braking release, basically, just to keep the car better balanced going into the corner.
I'd say probably just easier overall, right? Don't try to throw it in so hard and focus more on, hey, I'm going to be a little conservative on entry so that I can get back on the throttle as early as possible.
Okay.
And then carry that speed to the rest of the way through. And then we'll just work on inching, a little bit more as you get comfortable. Because this is another, just like corners 2, 3, and 4, it's another comfort corner, right? Once you get comfortable, you can really gain a lot of time. But it takes a lot of laps.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I will say that corner at lap 1 is a great place to be conservative because not a lot of people will. And you can gain a few spots. A, there'll be some contact with people in front of you probably, and B, even if there's not, you're going to have a few people just run wide there. So it's a lap 1. Everybody's nerves are high, right? They're all looking in their mirrors. It's a very good opportunity to make up some spots if you're able to stay patient. So coming to the next complex is 12, 13, 14, 15. We're going to take these all in one because they kind of set each other up. I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll do. We'll do 12 and 13 together first, and then we'll see if we want to extend it. So, next set of corners here. Again, I'm using the shadow, which again isn't a great. Shadows and stuff that move isn't great, but I'm using the distance to the start of the curbing again in this corner. So it feels like in car. Go ahead.
The total sign that you're just going under never changes.
True.
That's usually what I use.
I gotcha. For me, I like looking on track as much as possible, and so I don't want to be looking up. So I just judge from this. But yeah, if you time it where you're under the sign, that is great too, right? Like Danny said, it doesn't change. Hard braking zone, and you could really turn in with a lot of brake. I feel like here, and the Cardo got warned.
I was in trouble. Wow. Coach.
Oh,
Uh,
man.
well, let me make it up to him because we're the Trackalicious admin team is trying to figure things out here, but we did set up the, if I remember how to spell coach, the exclamation point coach to go get some coaching from Cardo Racing School. So
Nice.
for your little timeout, we have a gift in return. So sorry about that, Cardo. We got to figure that one out. That's a new thing I just learned as that happened.
That's funny.
Vulcan. Hey, Vulcan.
What's up, Vulcan?
Come
Hi,
race with
Vulcan.
us, buddy.
So yeah, coming into here, I find that you could kind of enter with a ton of brake, and this is another corner where I try not to slow down too much in the beginning and kind of let the center roll, because it seems like I've never actually looked at it from a radius perspective, but it seems like it is sort of like a little bit of a decreasing radius, so it gets tighter as it goes, which then you don't want to slow down too early because then it's hard to make up that time, right? And you're just going to wait and wait and wait. So so coming in here, I tend to brake heavy and turn in with a lot of brake, and then once I get low down enough, let it roll and try to keep it. I try to keep it to the right hand side. You can use the green curbing a little bit as well, and the goal here is to get yourself set up for corner 13. And so coming into here, you're never going to be. You don't want to keep it so tight that you're on the right hand side by the white line. You kind of want to be in the middle to the middle right-ish. Set yourself up for this next corner, which again, there's not really a good breaking point for me. This is a feel thing coming through. Distance to apex, and this is another corner you have to be a little bit patient on. You can use the curb like I did here, and this is another track cut area on the exit, so you don't want to go. I was pretty conservative there. I think again, middle of the car, kind of where the antenna is to the drainage grate is as far as you want to go. If they align, you're probably close to a track cut. And again, like this is one of those, just like that corner 5, 6, and 7, where you want to maybe be a little bit conservative on the first corner to set yourself up for the next one. As a because if you come too wide through here, you're just going to lose a ton of time. So I'd rather lose a half a tenth or a tenth in this first section, and then make that up, or at least maintain coming through, as opposed to losing a tenth and then losing 2/10 with a left-hander. So again, not a good breaking point. The braking zone here is just a touch. I think in some cars you could probably do it with just a lift, but I like to just do a touch to get the nose down, and then turn in, use the curb, and just make sure it doesn't slide too wide. And I'll stop on that. I'll cover 13 and 14, or sorry, 12 and 13 together, and we'll cover 13 and 14 here next, because you do have enough time to really get yourself set up for the next corner. So it's not as much of a combo as I was thinking. Great. All right, so coming into 14 and 15, let me back it up just a second. Hey, look at this, another corner that I end up using the distance to the curbing. Danny, chime in if you have a better breaking point, but that seems to be, at least for me, the name of the game with Spa is how far am I before the red and white curbing starts is when I start braking. So like, again, in car, it looks like as soon as my dash gets there. In replay, it's maybe what?
For this corner, I'm probably even worse. I use the rev limiter because it gets to the point where you're topping out of that fourth gear, or in the GT3s, it's the third gear, I believe. So, yeah, I use that, which is not ideal. But the curb is an awesome option, like just before, like you're showing here, just before here.
Gotcha. Cool. And so this corner, somewhat medium. It's easy for people to overslow. It's hard to get right. this is another corner where you can use the green curb or not. Actually, for the first time, I don't use it, but you can if you want to. And the goal here, it's less important in the GT4s as it is the threes, because in the threes, you're pretty much flat. So you come out of this corner and you don't lift again until the chicane. In the GT4s, that's not the case. So it's not quite as important to come off this with a ton of speed because you're gonna have to lift in 15. But you still kind of take it the same way. It's a late apex for me, and because I'm trying to maximize the speed through the corner. And so look at that, amazing. Did it again. Okay, so this one. Okay, coming down through, I try to apex it a little late, and then so like apex right where the green curbing stops, and that allows me to come off this corner and use. You can't. I think once your tires touch the grass, it's a track cutter, maybe even a little bit before. But you want to use all this exit curb, both on exit of 14, but also on entry of 15, because it just widens the corner a little bit, widens the radius, and allows you to carry a little bit more speed through, as opposed to coming off the corner and keeping it a little bit tighter on entry. So use all you can. And in the GT4s, at least in the McLaren, you have to just lift a tiny little bit. You can use this curb. You can actually use it to help rotate the car. I wouldn't use all the curb. I would use maybe where it just starts going from the drainage grate up. It's a little round. Let me see if we can see it. At least it feels like it's round, like as I'm driving it. Let's see. Yeah, like this bottom section. How do I slow this down? There we go. I try to use this maybe first quarter of the curb. I try not to go any higher than that. On it seems to upset the car. And then get back on the throttle. You can let the car run out to about that far. Again, center of the car to the outside gray line. Drainage grate is where I try to keep it and be a little safe. I think that you have a little more leeway there, but again, try to err on the conservative side. And then you're full throttle for a little bit longer through the next set of corners. So, or not in the GT4s, but GT3s you are. So here, I'll play this back.
So I don't know if this is a silly question. It's something I struggle with. I don't know if anyone else out there has the same problem, but how did you figure out where your wheels are relative to your dash?
I don't know, it's no different than a passenger car, right? Like, you kind of feel where the rumble strips are when you run over them through the force feedback in the wheel. And then okay, like, if I start hitting this curb, that's the outside of my wheel. And then, some cars, like, I think the McLaren is a little bit wider in the back than it is in the front, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you use any
Maybe
visual
just a little
cues? Do you use any visual cues on your dash to say, oh, it's about, wherever the dial is or wherever the vent is or
No.
whatever? Okay.
No, it's usually just
A feel type
after
thing.
driving it for a while, it's just feel. That's why, like, if I switch cars and you go from a wider car to a narrower car or vice versa, it takes some cases several races to get used to it. When you're really trying to push, like, hey, I want to use all the track and literally have less than an inch to the grass, right? When you're pushing it that far, it does take quite some time to adjust. Like, the spot that always gets me is Suzuka, the 130R. If I'm changing cars, say I run a GT4 and then I run a GT3, I always get on the grass there and mess up. It takes me like 10 laps, and it's just, I don't use any sort of reference point on the dash or anything like that. It's purely like, how far from my center vision am I? And that's no different than kind of how you in a passenger car, right? You kind of get that feeling after you drive it for a while, like, I have this much, right, to my left and to my right. So,
And keep in mind, while we're talking about this viewpoint, you'll notice that Ed's FOV is tailored to his setup. So I highly recommend that if you haven't had a chance to go out and look at your field of view, or those view settings to take 30 or 30, 45 seconds to look for a field of view calculator and adjust it for your setup. So that way, one, your reference points are going to be more accurate, and it's going to be really easy for you to start making those consistent. But you'll also notice that if you have a really narrow or high FOV, the cars, everything is going to feel like it's in warp speed compared to an actual lower FOV, or let's say I think I run like 34 on mine. Everything's going to slow down, and it's just going to bring everything back into the focus and into focus. So keep that in mind too when we're talking about these reference points, because what we see on our monitors isn't necessarily what is being portrayed. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I did a ton of research on FOV after I got my rig, and I'm on an ultra wide, but like I scaled this down to 1080p for the stream, and it is so important to get the FOV right. Like there's a mathematical formula behind it, right? It sort of sets the scale of the world correctly and sets your like Danny said, sort of the speed of how everything comes at you. It's more about like how you view and how much you view and how that dictates the speed. It obviously doesn't change the speed of the car at all, but it does. Like if you go to a zoomed in field of view, things feel slower, right? Because you're seeing less of the world go by you. If you're zoomed out, everything seems like it's so quick. The best analogy I sort of heard about it is if you're driving down a country road and there's like nothing to your left and right, you don't have anything. You could be going 70 and it feels like you're going 40, right? Because you have no reference points, right? If you're in the city and you're going 70 down the streets of Chicago, everything's like 70 feels like 120, right? And so that's sort of how like it was explained to me through normals like YouTube, videos and stuff, and then it also can affect the scale of things. So the ideal thing is to get the monitor as close as you can to you, within reason. Do the calculations, which is screen size and distance to monitor. That should generate a field of view that you want to use in the game. And then if you're like, oh, I can't see my left and right as much as I can, then go ahead and adjust the seat position in the game. And iRacing can do it, and ACC you can do it. It's pitch and distance and things like that to where you want, and use that. You're going to be much more consistent doing it that way, as opposed to just trying to set your field of view to see what you want to see, and then racing that way. Because, like Danny said, it's going to change your perception of how fast everything's coming at you. So.
And Eric, I tried to post the FOV calculator, and Nightbot is not appreciative.
You are. How dare you?
A little bit of a power trip.
Yeah, how dare you? I am going to try to address this concern, not being the expert at it. So let's see if we can figure this out. I apologize.
You should be able to post it. It's just FOV-calculator.com. And what it'll do is it'll give you your screen ratio. So you will have to know that. For instance, mine is a 21:9. Your distance to the screen, either in inches or centimeters, how many you have, and then it should give you a game that you can choose. In this case, ACC is not. Assetto Corsa will be the one that you're going to want to use, and it should give you something pretty close.
And keep in mind, some games use horizontal field of view, and some games use vertical field of view. So, Assetto Corsa uses vertical. iRacing uses horizontal, I believe. So, just because you go from one sim to another, just keep in mind that those can be, different between sims because they calculate. They use a different field of view number. Cool. All right, so going to the next set of corners, we are 16, 17. In GT3s, I'd skip these for the most part because they're flat. In GT4s, 16 is flat, 17, at least in the McLaren, is not. So your goal going into 17 is to get as far right as you can, to reduce the radius of the line you're taking so you can carry more speed. So you want to get, like, again, for me, middle of the car to where this grade is about as far as I try to go. You might be able to go, I think in this case, it's the tires on the white line. Your left side tires can't go past the right side, but it's very easy to get a track cut by going too far. And then the GT4 is actually, in this car, I don't have a lot of downforce, so I had to actually brake slightly. In most cars, I think you could probably take this with a slight lift. And then your goal here is to use as much of this as you can on exit. Again, in GT3s, you kind of don't have to in most cases, depending on the setup, but in GT4s, it's more important. So here it's a, not a, again, another point where there's not a good braking point or anything like that to use as a reference, or lift point. For me, this is just based on feel, how far I am to the corner. And then again, here a slight brake, lift. In other cars, maybe just be a lift. I doubt you can take this corner flat in any of the GT4s, unless Danny, you know differently.
I can't remember of one offhand, except for maybe the Porsche or the Aston.
Gotcha.
And if you are brave enough, these GT4s can take that inside curb. I would just exercise extreme caution with that, and that might help bump your speed through that corner a little higher. But again, use that with extreme caution.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
All right, cool. We'll run through this full speed in car, and we'll get to the last chicane. Yeah, for sure. You could. Yeah, good point on using that inside curb. So coming up to the final set of corners, the chicane. Braking point for actually in the GT4s, I feel like since you're not going as fast, you brake almost a little bit later than you do in the GT3s. For me, it is. I mean, you probably guessed it by now. Distance to the curb. In an optimal track, you can also use the where the rubber starts. I guess how it looks in car, right? But it's basically between the 100 and the 150 marker is where you're going to be eyeing out where you're going to be braking. And this is very heavy braking zone. You want to keep it to the left because your goal is to set yourself up. You want to maximize your speed for the first corner, but within reason. But you want to set yourself up for the second left-hander to get a good run, get a good exit. And so here you're staying left, braking very, very hard. Usually it's deeper than you think. Turning in late, and you can use all this curb here on the inside. In pre-1.8, you can actually get up on the red a little bit, but that's been curbed. No pun intended. So you can actually use a little bit more than this. I try to shoot for like what I feel like my tires would just clip this red curb. If you get up on it, it seems like it bounces the car and hurts your exit. So you can use a little bit more than I did. And the goal is to get yourself a very nice, speedy middle and exit for the left-hander. It's very easy to overdrive this or get back on the throttle a little too early, and then the back of the car wants to step out. I think it did here. Yeah, look at that. Perfect timing. So that is not ideal coming through here. You don't want the car to do that and slide. And so another one of those where you want to compromise this first corner just a little bit to set yourself up well for the left-hander. So let me play this through full. And you can use all that curbing on the inside. I messed this up a little bit, but you can use all of the red and white. Don't use the red hump, but you can use the red and white pattern curb. And then you can bring this all the way out to a little bit further than that. I feel like, I think in this instance, left side tires over the grate might give you a cut. So there's a little bit more room on exit, but this is a great passing opportunity corner where you can kind of deke somebody out to go in too deep. Like I personally like to pretend like I'm gonna go inside so they block inside, and then stay on the outside, get a good turn in here where they're usually going in too deep, and then usually now they're stuck on the inside, and then you give them room on the inside, but they can't carry any momentum. So if you trust them, you can run, on wide line through this corner and then scoot away down the straightaway. But I'll go in car, show this one. See that little bit of oversteer there. And then you're full throttle. And that's a lap at Spa.
Well done.
Yeah, I'll go. Let me do this real quick. Let me just go back. I wanted to look at this from a helicopter view just for a second, just to show you. So again, like, you know, I guess you can't see my mouse. I should have done Control F7. Thanks, Eric, for that little tip. Let's see if that works.
Yeah, just do a quick play and stop again, because sometimes it doesn't take the Control F7. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
You just kind of see the helicopter view of, a decent. Again, you could use a little bit more of the curbs than I did, but really fun corner. And just watch for people. You'll see if people make a mistake, they'll tend to run over the curb, or a lot of people don't use this little gap here. And so, just beware on exit that you're not going to get collected from someone else coming back on if there's a yellow flag ahead. So yeah, Danny, anything on the 18 and 19 there?
No, you nailed it. You mentioned using the sausage curb a little bit, sausage curb as we call it, but the raised curb on the inside of the corners there. In 1.8, they actually modeled the tire running up the curb, and with the new improved damper / bump stop physics, the cars handle these curbs a lot nicer. So you can exploit that a little bit to gain a little bit extra time. Just keep in mind that these tires, they're not as wide and as grippy as the GT3s. We don't have the downforces of the GT3s, so be patient with the car. 'Cause they only do one thing really well. They either brake really well, they corner really well, or they accelerate really well. As soon as you ask them to do more than one thing at a time, they start complaining. So, but other than that, no.
There's a joke in there
nailed it.
somewhere about husbands or wives or something, but I'll let
No, I would never. My wife is probably listening. No. But yeah, just be patient with the cars. This is a tough track. And if we could have a word of the day, that would probably be it.
Cool. Thanks, Danny.
So yeah, I mean, we're looking pretty good on time. Maybe we could do a run through of the lap and in-car view,
Sure.
give people a full lap feel of
Full
some
Monty. Let's do it.
Kerstetter magic.
If anybody does have any questions about anything, feel free to shoot them out to us. That includes setup, how we take a corner, etc. So if you have any questions, let us know. Ali asked what was the CDA time, so that's a great benchmark as well. So if anybody doesn't know, CDA has lap times posted on their website for various cars, including the GT4s. For Spa, it's a 2.29, so 2 minutes 29 seconds flat.
And keep in mind some of the times since the 1.8 patch are a little bit off. So unless it's like CDA 3, there may be a little discrepancy there, but that's always a good benchmark.
Yeah, it's a great target time. I think 1.8 puts us probably 0.2 to 0.5 of a second off. Maybe even more. It could be upwards of a second.
Cool.
Awesome.
I don't think you could do anything covertly, Mex, but there's plenty of ways you can punt someone on this track. So
I think the right way to do it is to practice in real life first, and then come try it on the sim.
or just close your eyes through Al Rouge. That usually works pretty well.
Well, that was awesome. I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions. I don't think so. It looks like most of the people on there are a bunch of wizards in ACC. Well, that's a good question. So, from Darku, asking how to set up, how do you configure your setup and all of that stuff? So, let me.
Can I get a clarification when you're talking setup? Are you talking like monitors and wheel and things like that? Or are you talking about the car setup?
That's a very good clarification.
Ollie, we did have a great battle. Sorry about the bump.
Is that what we're calling it, Danny? The bump.
Yeah, well, no. In race 1, Ollie
actually
passed me, and we were trying to fight it. So
gotcha. So
car setup.
Car setup. Yeah, like if you just got ACC not even 2 weeks ago, what I would focus on is just learning what the car is telling you. I would just load the aggressive. And unlike a lot of games, the default aggressive setup is not bad for a lot of the cars, and so I would just work on. I wouldn't worry about tinkering with setups until you get an understanding of what the car tries to tell you. Because I know when I came from iRacing to ACC, the feeling was vastly different. Like what felt like understeer didn't feel like understeer in ACC, and same thing for oversteer. I felt like I hit the corner really well, but then the back end would slide, but I wasn't quite sure what the game was telling me was happening. And so I would spend just a little bit more time maybe feeling that out, not worrying about setups as much. And then once you start understanding what the game's telling you, then you could start tweaking setup to say, oh, okay, I'm oversteering or I'm understeering here, and I want to make a rate change or change ride heights or bump stops or things like that. Sorry, Danny, go ahead.
That's a great point. And something that we forget a lot about. It's very easy for a lot of people to say, "Oh, just do this to the car; it'll drive better." But you have to spend time with the car to actually learn how to get it to drive better. A lot of the fast lap times that are in ACC right now are not necessarily because people have super secret setups, other than the new finding with the tow values. But other than that, really it just comes down to practice. Pushing the car as hard as you can, getting the most out of the lap time that you possibly can, learning the track and the cars. And when you feel like you've hit that brick wall, and you're still fighting some inconsistencies with the cars and certain corners, then you start looking at the setup. But to generalize things for setup in general, the easiest way to start is with your aero. It's going to affect the overall balance of the car throughout the entire track. So if you find that the car is too oversteery for you, bring the rear ride height down a little bit or increase the rear wing. If it's too stable, then increase those values while keeping the front as low as you can. And then you can start fine tuning it with mechanical, the wheel rates, the bump stops, the diff, and the brake bias. And then when you have those sorted to how you like it, then you can start tinkering with dampers. Be careful though with the dampers, as to really know what you're doing or what you're changing. You will want to start using third-party applications such as Motec or racing sim tools, so you can actually see a histogram of what you're changing value-wise. A lot of times we go stiffer. What we think is stiffer is actually causing an imbalance to the suspension. So another fine-tune item that you can look at is your camber and your toe values and your caster values in the tire setup, all while maintaining your ideal PSIs. So this is a topic that we've talked about in the past, where we can certainly dive down a big giant rabbit hole that never ends. So start with the fundamentals, get the car balanced, and then start tinkering from there.
So I'm gonna step in here, and even me listening to Danny talk about all those things, having been an ACC and being an automotive engineer who's done a bit of racing in the past, is overwhelming. So what I like to tell newer drivers is you got to treat it like an onion. Okay, it's just about peeling off one layer at a time. So just like how Ed mentioned, I would even go one step even more basic and go start with the safe setup. Right? Start with a safe setup so you're putting down some consistent laps. When you feel like you're getting a lot of understeer and it's limiting your performance, go to the aggressive setup. Once you do the aggressive setup and you've got yourself in this where it's performing to its limit, then you start messing around with the things that Danny talked about. And one thing that I would like to say is that setups are very specific to multiple things. They're specific to the track, they're specific to the car, they're specific to the weather settings, they're specific to the driving style, but also the skill level. A setup that Danny and Ed might be comfortable with, in it being a little bit more twitchy and a little bit more on edge because they like to turn in, might not work for me because I don't have the feel or the understanding to be able to catch it as quickly as they do. So it is very skill and driver specific. Going to getting to that level takes time, takes practice, and I think if just a kind of outside of the box suggestion is join a community. I posted our Discord link. I will also post our partners Discord link right here. So I'm flexing our exclamation points here since we have it set up. So feel free to join Trackalicious. We have, Danny and Ed are in here, and we have Coach Cardo as well. Really great community, and you see it every season. Okay, you start with a new guy that's like, oh man, this person's kind of slow, but it's great to have more people. And then the next season they come in, they're a little bit faster, and the next season they come in, they're even faster than that. So it's really great to see progression, and you always see it. It always happens. It takes a little bit of time, and it progresses as fast as you want it to, as fast as you put time into it. Both 949 and Trackalicious are really great, friendly environments for you to hop in. We have a coach's corner that you can pop into and ask questions. But what I do stress is put some time into it, get to a point where you're feeling like you're hitting a little roadblock, and then ask a question. Do that again, ask a question. You got to really understand what you think is stopping you so that you can get guidance as to what to change and what to improve moving forward from there. And finally, I will also add that if you do !coach, we have Cardo Racing School, our partner with Cardo Racing School, who of which Coach Cardo Huesca, who's in the chat here, I don't know if he stepped away or not, but he gives lessons at an extremely reasonably priced rate. So once you get in and start getting a feel for what's going on, get a lesson. I've done it. I don't know if you guys have done it at a certain point in time, but It doesn't matter where you are on the scale. There's always someone better and someone with new information. And if you watch some of our previous streams or our VODs that get transferred onto YouTube, even Ed and Danny, who are at the top end of our league, learn from each other in certain little details that, someone mentions, go, oh, I didn't know about that. And someone else kind of learns from that. So, sorry, it's a bit long-winded, but there's a lot that goes with your question, and be patient. It takes time.
Absolutely. You said it great.
So hopefully that answers your question, Darku. And if you have any other questions, like I said, please feel to hop in either our Discord or Carter Racing School or 949. Happy to help out. And yeah, would love to have you. Go ahead. Sorry, Danny.
No, that's a great point mentioning the Discord, because you do have some great resources there. If you do want to talk further about setting up a car, ping me or Ed or any one of us, and we'll be happy to do what we can to walk you through things in a format where we have a little bit more time. So there's a nice little ACC Garage channel in there where you can ask all your questions.
Absolutely. And join a league. What that does is it gives you structure to target something every week. So I have a race this week. Let me try to practice this and figure out what the complications are for this particular track. And it forces you to use a car for a certain amount of time and start getting comfortable or uncomfortable in it. So I think that's a really great thing too. That I would say that's the thing that probably helped me out most, is being in the league and having to force myself to practice. Not that I don't want to, but as life gets in the way, but having the commitment of being a part of the league kind of obligates you to do that a little bit more. And being a part of the races in itself is a practice. So really good all around way to improve your skills. Okay, so I'm gonna if Darko, if there are any more questions, hop into our Discord. Just to quickly answer Mr. Max's questions, ignoring most of the trolls. I'll answer one of your questions. No safe setup is a safe setup with Lucasi on a track. That might be true for you, Max, because I'm coming for you. I will destroy you on track. That's the goal. So I want you to try harder to try and outdo me. I'm looking forward to it.
Also, I will never purposely hit Ed unless he tells me to. So just throwing that out there, Max.
200 IQ big brain play where Ed's trying to get out of a tough situation. Hey, Danny hit me, so they feel sorry for me.
No, I'll just run. I'll die before I hit Ed. I would never do that to him. Only Ali Raza and all the other people I hit tonight in the MX5 Cups, which y'all should join.
Those are extremely fun. So Darku, for a bit of information and for anyone else who's on here, we have multiple leagues going on. We have the MX5 iRacing League on Tuesdays with 949 that a bunch of these guys are on. It's really fun. It's meant to be kind of a relaxed league, not so serious, but a good way to work on some of your skill. We have the Thursday night GT4 League, which is another great league to learn in. The GT4s are a little bit less on the limit, I would say, if that's a fair way of saying. A lot closer racing, given that it's lower downforce. Then we have the Sunday night GT3 leagues, we have a huge field of over 50 drivers. Again, really fun. A little bit more intense than the GT4s, higher speeds, lesser margins. And then finally, the 2 hour, 40-minute endurance league that we have that's once a month. And that exercise is a different part of your racing skill and your endurance, your mental toughness, your consistency, your patience. So that's another really good one. to really hop into and improve, because you're spending a lot of time on track. So feel free to hop in. Hope to see more of you guys on there. And appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this great session with both Ed and Danny. Appreciate your guys' time. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight and let you guys say the final word.
Go ahead, Danny.
Patience. No. Thanks for having us. Thanks for doing this for everybody, and I'm looking forward to Thursday. Should be fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, everybody.
All right, thank you and good night.